Dia, hope your family's doing well. I gotta tell you though, bro, a lot of the claims you're making, Donald Trump has made, and he is not exactly known for being honest on things. And if you look this stuff up, you'll find it. Starting with the Russian hoax. 2016, there was a belief that Donald Trump's campaign had help from Vladimir Putin, which instigated a report by the FBI run by one Robert Mueller. Findings led to some 14 individuals that worked with the Trump administration had contact with the Russian government, some of which, like Michael Flynn, didn't tell the FBI about it. If you're going to talk to another nation, especially about state things, you actually have to talk to the FBI and tell them what a foreign nation wanted from you. Now, Trump called this whole thing a hoax. In fact, he even said initially that there was no contact, and then it came out that there was no collusion. And what it came down to was they couldn't prove that these individuals spoke with Trump first before speaking with the Russians. But they were individuals that spoke with the Russians. Now, I know what you're going to say next, but Trump said that this is all a lie, and they opened up another investigation looking into this, and they did. This would be known as the John Durham report, or the Durham report. What they looked up was, did the FBI have a righteous call to look into this case, or was this all political BS? And what this report determined was the FBI jumped the gun into looking into things. However, the findings from the Mueller report were accurate. So what was determined was there were Russians meddling in the 2016 election, but there wasn't a Biden-led conspiracy to go after Donald Trump. So if you don't know, this Trump push for this investigation actually proves that the president was lying. Now let's talk about Hunter Biden. Now this guy was a mess. And for the last 7 years, the federal government did a full court press on this guy. The DOJ investigated him under the Biden administration, which Biden could have killed the investigation if he wanted to. Now, the conspiracy that came out here was that he had a laptop where he was doing all sorts of drugs, and he worked for a company in Ukraine known as Burisma. And he sold connections to the president. In other words, let people talk to the president through him. The DOJ investigated this, and there even was a special report done by Congress investigating all these things, led by Jim Jordan. And their findings were as following. There was no actual connection between Biden and Burisma, meaning his father. The emails that came out of a laptop, first there was no laptop, it was a hard drive, which they patched together a bunch of videos of this guy doing drugs and having relations with prostitutes. So when I say this guy was messed up, he had a major drug problem, like smoking crack. Information they found on Burisma was, yeah, he got paid for that. He worked for a few months as an advisor to Burisma. And while he was in the middle of his drug, spiral down the hole, literally living on the streets and parts of it, like Skid Row in LA, he didn't pay taxes for 3 years. So when he finally got his act together and turned it around, he actually stepped in, paid all the fines, and paid off his bills. And that's when Jim Jordan jumps in. The Republican Party opened up that investigation I was talking about, and they decided to retract the initial IRS negotiated structure. And the findings after going through all these details were, yeah, he paid his bills. However, he bought a gun while he supposedly was under the influence. And the reason they say that is they have his account saying that I was under the influence, I was getting high, and one day he bought a gun. If you don't know, that's illegal. That's federally illegal. So they're charging him with that. Not some crazy conspiracy. They were charging him with buying a gun while he was under the influence. In other words, after years of going after this guy and dragging this dude through the mud, the only thing they really found was he was an alcoholic and he had a drug problem. Oh, he also had a relationship with his dead brother's wife, which that probably wasn't good. But it's not like he had a relationship with a porn star and then paid her not to say anything about it right before an election. Or like he was a adjudicated sexual assaultist from the 1990s and then dragged her through the mud until she sued him again and again and again. Now this guy's open on his taxes, so we know how much he owed and how much he paid, and he paid off his bills. So now that I mentioned all this, why don't we talk about what the hell's going on right now with these two? Donald Trump Jr.'s net worth has increased by $500 million in the last year since his father was the president. Now this information comes from Reuters. On top of that, Trump just opened up a new company that makes drones, and he was able to get a federal contract for close to 500 million as well, which, by the way, that's illegal. You actually have to put contracts out to bid with the federal government. But Hunter Biden did drugs. Not like he took $500 million and it just so happened to get a contract which he could never have gotten under any other president, but whatever. Now let's talk about Eric. Well, this guy just opened up a crypto mining company. He's also running the Trump Corporation. This corporation's value has increased by $2 billion in the last year. See, whenever the president goes to some place in the Middle East, he's there negotiating. If you contracted this with someone like Jimmy Carter, a very weak president who was so concerned about violating the law that he sold his peanut business. And you have this guy that openly, both of them are openly taking money. Again, you don't believe me? All you have to do is look this up. And what about these two? We got here Barron. Oh, he's only made about 190 million this year in cryptocurrency, which, by the way, we're talking about Trump's cryptocurrency, which Donald Trump just so happened to have pardoned someone who was using their cryptocurrency to fund such terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And this guy was pardoned by Donald Trump, and then this guy just managed to buy $2 billion worth of Trump's weird crypto coin, which, by the way, is it even legal for the president to make money off the presidency? No, that's unconstitutional. The Emoluments Clause. Let's not forget about that weird plane thing that he got from Qatar. That's also illegal. Now, what about Jared Kushner? Well, the last time President Trump was in office, he only made around $2 billion off the Saudis. But it had nothing to do with Donald Trump. It just so happened that when they're negotiating, he was there and they're doing business deals. But it had nothing to do with the president. Nothing at all. No. And what? He's made close to 1.5 billion this year? Oh!